Thank you everyone so much for being here. I know it's a very busy and stressful time of the semester. We're so lucky to have here with us today three amazing panelists who have all gone from studying performance at IU to now working very high-powered arts admin jobs. So I'll just introduce them one by one. We have Tehvon Fowler-Chapman. Tehvon, can you wave hi? He's the
Hello.
executive director at the Washington Concert Opera. And we have Katie McGuinness, who is the Director of Artistic Planning at our very own Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. So if you've ever been up there to see some of their programming, you've definitely benefited from her creative work.
Hi,
We also,
everyone.
hi. We also have Nina Zhou as this Assistant Vice President for Advancement at the Colburn School. Can you wave to us, Nina? Yeah, and she's joining
Hi.
us from very sunny LA, which I'm sure is much warmer than Bloomington right now.
Sure
So
is.
we're very grateful to have them here. They've taken a lot of time out of their busy schedules to talk to us about their experiences and advice. So let's thank them with a silent round of applause. Very grateful to have them here. Just a few logistical things. We are recording the session for those students that can't make it today, but it is being recorded in speaker mode only. So if you're not comfortable with being seen on the recording, just keep your mic muted and you'll be totally fine. As for questions, you can just bring them up throughout the session, either by unmuting yourself and asking directly. You'll find that our three panelists are very friendly, wonderful people. So feel free to just jump in the discussion at any time. Or you can also put them in the chat and I'll find a convenient time to interrupt and ask your question. If for any reason you want to ask an anonymous question, feeling a little bit self-conscious, that's totally fine too. You can privately message me with the disclaimer that it's anonymous and I'll just ask the question without revealing your name. So with all that said, let's hand the mic over to the panelists, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves to us, maybe talk about what your major and degree was, your background and career journey, and what got you interested in arts admin in the first place. And let's just go in order of who's sitting next to me on Zoom. So maybe Nina, Tehvon, and then Katie.
Sure, happy to. Hi, I'm Nina. So I currently work at Colburn, as Elizabeth so graciously introduced. Prior to this, so I moved to LA about a year and a half ago. And prior to this, I was the managing director of development at San Francisco Symphony. I was there for about 4 years. And before San Francisco, I was a fellow at New World, a pianist, New World Symphony. And then before that, I was at Jacobs School, like many of you. And I did my master's there. And I'll go into a little bit more detail later. I'm actually about to finish my DMA there. So very much in some of your shoes too. And I think Elizabeth asked, what drew me into arts admin. Honestly, it's funny because I've always been drawn to many things that were above and beyond performance, even though my major was in performance. When I was younger, I was really drawn to psychology, and that manifested into education and now into leading teams. And but specifically arts administration, as you know, as some of you might know, the DMA at Jacobs School at the time when I started, so might have been many, many moons ago, different now, but we needed to add 2 minors. And I really wanted the minors that I added to be useful and beneficial for me in my future. And so besides my performance major, the 2 minors I had was in education and arts administration. And so that just, took me on this journey.
Great. I can introduce myself next. I am Tehvon Fowler-Chapman. I'm the executive director of Washington Concert Opera in Washington, D.C. Prior to that, I moved to New York to work at National Sawdust as their director of artistic administration for all of about 3 months before COVID struck, and I was rendered unemployed. And it was a really great thing for me, ultimately, because I ended up in this position back in DC. In addition to working at National Sawdust, I've also been the manager of external affairs at Vocal Arts DC, which is a small classical voice recital organization in Washington. and I currently advise on their digital programs right now. And before that, I was the company manager for Wolf Trap Opera, which is a young artist residency for opera in Wolf Trap, or at the Wolf Trap Foundation for Performing Arts in Vienna, Virginia. And it's so interesting that I am like so involved in opera because I'm a percussionist and I can't sing. And I've always been so used to doing things that are more interdisciplinary in instrumental music. But Wolf Trap was kind of like the gateway drug for me to all things opera and classical voice. And I actually really love it now. Prior to that, I got my master's degree in arts administration from the School of Public and Environmental Affairs. And I spent 1 year at the Jacob School right before I transitioned to that next degree. And the reason I did, and it's kind of what got me interested in arts administration, was my undergrad degree was in music education. And I taught a lot of marching band. I wrote music for shows and all of these things. So in facilitating a lot of those programs and a lot of those events, I already had a knack for doing the exact job that I do now, except for the raising money portion. And as I got into my first year at Jacobs, my 1 year at Jacobs, I found myself looking at a lot of education programs. Working as an education coordinator and education manager for a symphony orchestra. And I had to kind of stop myself and realize, like, what am I looking for? What am I trying to do while I'm here? And, what do I actually want to do when I finish school? And at the same time, I was looking for employment for myself. I started working as a dance company manager for the African American Arts Institute. And I was also watching a lot of my friends who were incredibly talented percussionists struggle in terms of finding jobs. And so my main goal with becoming an arts administrator is that I wanted to figure out what problems existed in our field and try and solve them so that we could create more opportunities for musicians and to create, just a more sustainable and flourishing industry, at least for classical music, but yes, but for the arts in general. It's my goal. So that is how I ended up in arts administration.
Those are hard acts to follow. So I will go last. They really are hard acts to follow. Hello to everyone watching. I'm really glad that you're here for this. And honestly, it's an honor to be on this call with Nina, Elizabeth, and Tehvon. I've met all of you quite recently, and it's really such a pleasure. So for me, as Elizabeth kindly introduced us already, my name is Katie McGuinness. I have been the Director of Artistic Planning for the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra for the past 4 years. And my primary duties there are to manage and program all things classical. So the classical subscription series and any concerts that are around classical music really fall under my management and programming. And I also work closely with our music director. Interestingly, I'm also leading our current music director search because this season, the 2021 season, will be Krzysztof Urbanski's 10th and final season with us, sadly, as music director. So I'm also leading our music director search and have just recently led our concertmaster search, which rendered a successful candidate in January 2020. So it's good times for the ISO, which is really nice. Prior to that, I was the right-hand woman for the artistic department at the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra for 3 years, and a lot of my duties there aligned with what I do at the ISO, but I was as the number 2 with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and also Pittsburgh exposed me to some elements of recording, commercial recordings, and a little bit to touring as well, which is really nice. I worked for the Aspen Music Festival for a couple of summers. I worked for a number of different volunteered for a number of different festivals throughout my home country, Ireland. But my first point of entry into management was actually with Harrison Powers in London, which is an artist management company based in London. And I was with them for just a little over a year as an assistant artist management. And that allowed me to have knowledge of the other side of the business in terms of promoting and booking artists. And also it gave me some understanding of how European orchestras and European art centers work. So that's knowledge that really stands to me today. But Elizabeth, you asked how we got into it. I think I kind of, in some ways, I'm actually really quite young to the arts management world. You know, I've only been in it for 10 years. I'm 37 years of age, but I think none of it would have been possible without my foundation. You know, I started playing the piano at the age of 4. I did festivals all throughout Europe growing up. I did festivals in America as well. I pursued my bachelor's in piano performance in Dublin, in my home city. Then I was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to go and study at IU, which is what brought me here on this call today. So I have to thank IU thousands of times every day in my life. But I did my master's in piano performance at IU, which was an amazing time in my life for 2 reasons. One, quite a personal reason, is I met my husband there, who is a pianist. He's a Greek pianist. But the other is that that's where I first encountered this thing called management. You know, as a musician, I had no idea that that was a lifestyle. You know, I was in my practice room for hours and hours. I was performing on stages. I was playing at festivals, taking master classes. I had no idea that there were people behind the stage actually putting it all together. And so I sort of fumbled into it in a way, because as I was doing my master's, I was realizing that I wasn't totally sure if actually being a concert artist is what I wanted to do. And I was being honest with myself. I love music and I live and breathe music every day of my life still to this day. But to actually have the strength to get up on stage to perform a concerto for memory for 50 minutes, you know, one of the Brahms concertos is 50 minutes long. To do that for memory in front of thousands of people, it's nerve-wracking, and it takes a lot, and it takes many hours of practice as well. And I was starting to wonder, was that really what I wanted to do? And then I was also thinking, okay, well, I'll probably not be a concert pianist playing on Wigmore Hall, but I'd probably be a very good piano teacher and maybe have a little chamber group and move back home to Ireland and whatnot. And then I met management indirectly, because my husband actually was doing an ad hoc performance, and he was performing the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto. And how it works, with many people here on the call probably know this, how it works is you have to get the orchestra together. You have to put the concert on. Nobody does it for you. And so my husband, with being Greek, his English wasn't great and he's a little shy. And he said, will you help me get the orchestra together? And so I did. I started pulling all of these musicians in together. I started talking about what was the flyer going to look like, what was the program setup going to be, the conductor, were we going to have a pre-talk, were we going to have a post-concert? And it was just so much fun. And then before I knew it, people started asking me in school, hey, can you help me? Like, what do you think I should program with this? Or do you think I should wear this outfit or this outfit? You know, it's a 4 o'clock concert. So should I wear this one or this one? Should I have an event after the concert? Who should I invite to the event? Should I invite my professors, or should it just be friends? I kind of want to network a little bit. How should I do that? And so I fell into it. And then it was my teacher back home in Ireland who said, you know, you can do this. Like, this could be a career for you. And that was the moment for me. I thought, really, I can actually do this? And I sort of, it took me probably about 3 years to actually do it, because then I left IU and I went back to Dublin to do my doctorate in piano performance. And I only made it 3 years through it, Nina. I never returned. But on the 3rd year, I took a sabbatical. I'm still 10 years later on my sabbatical. And I moved to London to work for Harrison Paris. And I thought, you know, I'm going to dip my toes in the water a little bit. And I knew instantly that that's what I wanted to do. And I said, I could be just another pianist, which would have been lovely. And I would have loved that. Or I could really make an impact. And I could be a musician who understands what it is to be a musician, who understands what it means to dedicate your entire life to this art form. I understand what that feels like. And I can now be in the office setting with other administrators who maybe don't have that perspective. And when they get caught up in PowerPoints and budgets, I feel like I can be a voice to remind them and say, these are human beings that have given their entire lives for this art form because they love it. So we need to help them, and we need to do everything in our power to support them. And that's 10 years later what I keep doing. And I've made it a mission almost to try to find musicians, young students, music students who say, I don't know if I want to be a performer. I try to tell them that doesn't mean you have to then be an engineer. You can actually still be in music. You can still be creative and making a real impact. And sort of, I think Tehvon and Nina, I know that's sort of along the lines of what your intentions are too. So that's me.
Engineering wasn't off the table for me though.
It was definitely off the table for me. I can tell you, there's no way I would be able to do that.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I wanted to open up the floor to questions early. If anyone has something that's on their mind, feel free to go ahead.
Hi, I just had a quick question. So I'm a voice performance major, and I was just wondering, how do you feel about, because I know there is the MPA and the Arts Admin dual degree, and I was just wondering, do you think that it's a worthwhile option, or do you think Arts Admin by itself is, enough for the job market, or is public affairs a really helpful tool to get yourself out there, I guess?
I can take that. I have only the arts administration degree. So I would say that without the MPA, I'm doing pretty okay. I would say at the same time, though, when I think about all of the skills that people have from the MPA as it relates to data and public policy that I don't have, especially living so close to DC. I would say that while it's not necessary, especially for our field, it is incredibly useful for doing an even better job. It's just more education that you get to add to your list of skills, and it also allows you to look at the problems in our field a little bit differently. So if you have the bandwidth and the time for it, I would say go for the dual degree, because I think it'll ultimately just make you a better administrator.
I would agree, but I also, think that your learning doesn't end when your degree ends. That's for all of us, And so even if you end up doing simply the arts administration degree, if you're interested in the public affairs portion of things, you will find some way to add it into your arsenal of skills.
Thank you.
I guess
I'm gonna quickly just jump in here as well, because it's interesting that with our three panelists, the three of you are phenomenally successful, and yet you've arrived at your success in three very different ways. And I think that a lot of what the Bloomington campus is about is finding your why, is finding that place in your heart that really drives you in your professional life, balancing that with education and making strategic choices, but making sure that when you're on the ground in Bloomington, that you're doing as much as you can to connect to those things that you love doing, that will be motivating you and driving you to where you will finally end up, wherever it is. And in terms of picking up information along the way, there is always conferences, there's always books, there's always people that you can talk to, there are always projects that you can get involved in that help you get from one place to the other. So I think that Julia, I think that your question is really, really important. And I'm just going to throw in the idea of thinking about, what's at the core of your personal motivation, and how, when you're in Bloomington, can you be connecting to that with the multiple options that you have available to yourself.
And I would add that it's not even like for me, because I don't have the MPA, and it's not the end of my career or anything at all. And what I'm also working on right now, and what I'm going to continue to work on, because I consider myself to always be a student, is, I do different fellowships. There's the Opera America Leadership Intensive for administrators of color. There's Sphinx Lead, which I'm a part of. but I'm also looking at certifications that are outside of my field. I'm currently working on Lean Six Sigma for process improvement, working my way up to a green belt. If I wanted to look into Agile for process improvement, I could do that as well. But it's just looking at everything that is available to us in the world. And while you're at IU, certainly within Bloomington, and saying, how can I apply this to the arts?
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that. And Alain, what you said as well is so true. It depends what your goal is. It depends what your mission is. I mean, you look at me, I don't even have the arts administration degree. I have performance degrees. All of them are performance degrees. And yet here I am 10 years in management. And then, to look to my husband as an example as well, he's on the faculty of Carnegie Mellon University in the music department, and he is a pianist and he runs a chamber music series and he lectures and music majors there. But he's just recently decided to do an MBA because he's thinking, well, I want to work in non-for-profit and I want to continue performing, but I want to have the skills and the knowledge that might be able to help nonprofit organizations. And it's interesting for me to see that from a personal perspective, because I've learned that stuff on the ground. I didn't learn it from a degree. I learned it on the ground, learned it from hands-on experience. But then I'm also looking at how he's learning it through his studies, and I'm seeing, advantages that, oh gosh, I kind of wish I did learn it through a book in that way, because that's really in-depth foundational knowledge that he has. But then it sometimes flips back to him saying, oh, well, look at this example on paper. And I'm like, yeah, but when you get into the real world, it's really not like that. So it's whatever fits you, and it's whatever your goal is going to be. And Tehvon listed out so many different things that you can do to gain knowledge. And I think we've all said this, you should never stop learning. I mean, my husband has a bachelor's, a master's, a performance diploma, an artist diploma, a doctorate, and now probably an MBA. He's 37. He's addicted to studying. But somebody once told me when I was about to start my doctorate, I moved back home to Ireland to do it, and they said, gosh, Katie, what more could you have to learn? And I just thought, God, that's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. Because I hope when I'm 95 years of age, I'm still learning something. So.
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I saw that Jenna and Elaine have raised their hands. So maybe we, and also Luke. So maybe we could go in that order, Jenna, Elaine, and Luke.
Yeah, Tehvon, I heard that you mentioned the Sphinx Lead program, and I'm actually I love what Sphinx is doing. I'm actually doing a project about it in Dr. Barker's class right now, and I would love to take part in that program someday. So do you think you could talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Sphinx Lead, for those of you who don't know, is a 2-year program funded by the Sphinx organization in Michigan that is geared towards empowering arts leaders of color. They lean more, they're starting to lean more towards administrators, but my cohort is a very diverse group of administrators, curators, musicians, etc. And what the program is a tool for networking for us. It is a tool for sharing ideas with people within the industry. And it's also a piece of financial support as well for us to kind of continue that growth outside of the scope of the programs that they do within Sphinx Lead. So we have 4 retreats. We usually have 4 retreats each year, in which we travel to different organizations to learn about their process and what things that they are dealing with and what innovations they are working to create. So that we can kind of go back home and take things that we've learned and apply them to our own situations. I would say that it was a huge deal for me to have it because it really opened up the arts world for me. And I think if it weren't for that network, I would say that having the much wider network was a big strength for me when I went into my interview for Washington Concert Opera, because now not only am I looking at the 2, rare operas that we perform usually, I'm also looking at all of these different avenues for partnership and collaboration and idea sharing on how I can expand programming, and also not just expand programming, but find money to do that programming, and how to relate to the greater DC community. So yeah, I mean, it's been an incredibly empowering experience for me. I have a very supportive cohort. I'm like the only I'm the only male in my cohort too, which is even it's even better. I'm like the dad of the group, even though I'm the youngest. It's just been a really good experience for me, and I don't think that I would be here really at this point in time if it were not for Sphinx Lead. So yeah.
So Colburn actually yesterday, they just announced a partnership with Sphinx, the organization, and I think we're going to host the first West Coast retreat. Whenever we can host such a thing, you know. But yeah, I urge you guys to read more about it. It's a great partnership. Sphinx itself is an amazing organization, absolutely invaluable experience and resources.
I'm so jealous because the entire 2 years that I've been in this program, we're like, when are we going to go to the West Coast?
I know.
And
well,
now
you know,
it's
you can
happening
come as an alum.
Well, you know, we were able to spend time with Juilliard, with the Cleveland Institute of Music, with Carnegie Hall, and New York Phil. The second cohort that's come up is spent time with the New Jersey Symphony. We all got to spend time with the New World Symphony. Like, there are a lot of different places that we cycle through that are, I mean, I consider to be very important in the development of young musicians, but also just in the really the sustainability of the field overall. And Colburn is now part of that list.
Elaine, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
All right,
I can hear you.
awesome. Hi, so I'm a third-year master's student at Jacobs and a second-year MA, arts admin over at O'Neill, and I just kind of had a general question about, like, I can't really decide if this is more like a question or just be me being like anxious about like what to do after graduating. But ever since I started my arts admin degree, I've been just kind of like dipping my toes in like pretty much everything, and I haven't really figured out like what kind of area of arts admin I wanted to go in, because like I've done like fundraising, I've done logistics, I've done marketing, a little bit of marketing and everything, and I was just wondering if there's a way to approach like how I could kind of like decide on those, like which area to go in, or if that's even necessary at this point, if that's something that I could figure out eventually by like entering the job market, and then that's something to figure out then, or just if you have general tips about those kind of things, I would really appreciate it.
I can take a little bit of that one to get it going. You're not alone with that. I've met so many different people over the years who've had that exact same question. So it's a really reasonable question to have. I think my tip for it would be to try to do as many internships as you possibly can. You know, if you don't have that instinctive, yes, I want to be in development, yes, I want to be in artistic, but you want to be a nonprofit, I think trying to work for festivals is a really great way of doing it, and trying to apply for internships. Like at the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, for example, I had an intern who was actually a student at IU who had the exact same query. And what she did was she was able to do it with her classes, but what she did was she worked for 2 afternoons a week in my department, in the artistic department, and then she did 2 afternoons that same week in the marketing department. And it allowed her in one semester get a sense of both the artistic and the marketing. And I think, you know, you could read about it in a book, and you could watch all the documentaries, and you could try to kind of figure it out through that approach, but you really don't know until you're actually in there. You need to kind of get in there, be an intern with those departments, and see on the ground what they do day to day and see which aspect you would like to do most. You know, I think that would be my best advice for that.
And I would say, you know, it feels like it's a huge decision before you jump in, but no decision is permanent. And, you know, you'll only know once you try things out.
Yeah, Alain, you actually remind me a lot of myself in grad school when I was in the MA program. Even talking to people who were in the field, like, what should I do next? They just looked at my resume and they're like, you're kind of like all over the place, it seems, because you have experience here, you have experience in this, and all of these things. It's like, what do you want to do? And on one hand, I think that it's exactly my experience is tailored exactly for what my current job is, which is to look at the organization on a holistic level. But also, I would second what both Katie and Nina were saying. It's really, like, especially when you're starting, there's no need to make any sort of financial decision. Or any sort of final decision, actually, sorry. I was working as an artistic operations coordinator, basically, as a manager with Wolf Trap, and simultaneously working as the manager of external affairs, doing marketing and development work with Vocal Arts TC. And when I went to National Sawdust to focus on artistic administration, that focus was still on everything. It was artistic administration, as well as marketing, development, finances, human resources, as they related to artistic administration. And then when I got laid off, I just went back to doing marketing and development for Vocal Arts TC. There are so many ways in which your life can pivot after school, and not just can, there's so many ways in which your life will pivot and kind of push you into a different direction. I would say for now, just be open to what opportunities are available in the field, and follow what works for you, what you actually enjoy, what you find fulfilling. I think you'll figure it out, and you can always make a decision to move in a different direction when you realize that. You don't have to have all of the answers ahead of time.
And I would say, as a musician, there's so many transferable skills, so many. And, as you gain more experience, you'll realize which of those skills are kind of your favorite, which of them highlight your strength best, even though you have all of them as a musician, and you can bring them over to whatever job, whatever department. Is it you love to build relationships, because that actually happens across all of these departments. Do you like to be more forward facing? Do you like to work on like all the logistics? Do you like to work on finances? These are all things that you won't really know until you try them out, but you actually probably have a knack for them anyway.
Thank you.
Luke, go ahead with your question.
Hello, my name's Luke, and first of all, thank you all so much for being here. It's phenomenal. It really shines some hope for a person who hasn't left their apartment in a week. So, thank you so very much for being the light at the end of the tunnel. But actually, I have two questions. The first one is specifically for Miss McGuinness. Do you happen to know Hannah Claire? I think she did an internship a year or two ago there, but you get a bunch of.
I'm trying to remember. I don't think she did one in my department, though.
Okay, well.
I don't think she did one in my department. I hope not.
I weirdly know Hannah Claire.
Do you?
It's a small world.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah,
crazy. I think she was at Juilliard at one point.
We might be talking about a different Hannah Claire. She's
different
here.
Hannah Claire's? Okay, definitely not. I know a different Hannah Claire.
Well,
I'm trying desperately to think, was she, because the name seems familiar to me, but then I worry because my manager of artistic planning, her name is Hannah Reffitt. So that's where I'm like going, am I confusing Hannah's?
Right.
Oh, now I think I remember Hannah. Yes. How do you know Hannah? Because I remember there being a problem that we had two Hannahs in the department. So I have a number, you have to forgive me. I have a number of different interns that come in
Right. No, of
a
course.
lot throughout the
Of
year.
course.
So hopefully she's not sitting next to you going, "Hey,
No,
she
no.
doesn't remember me."
No. I was just curious about the the connection and stuff like that, but that's not my main question. That's for everybody. So I am a junior studying music composition here at Jacobs School of Music, and then I'm also doing arts management. I discovered that middle of last year, and I've been working towards that. And I did my own concert last year, and I really enjoyed that, and I've really enjoyed pretty much every aspect of arts management. But what's the next step for someone like me coming out of university? Is it an internship? Do I apply everywhere? Do I go straight for a job? Should I look into grad school, even though I'm not entirely certain about that? And I don't know, not counting COVID, of course, on a normal circumstance. What do you all recommend?
I can take that. That's a huge question you're asking. And I think really you have to look a little inwards and think a little bit about your values. And like Alan said, think about the why. Why are you here studying music? What is it that you love about it? And I think absolutely, we talked about internships. I like to say it doesn't even have to be an official internship for you to volunteer strategically and bring projects into your portfolio. But I would say explore a little bit, and exploring could mean through internships, could mean through a job. It could mean through a contract position. It could mean in grad school and adding majors and minors that could open up those doors. So, it's really for each person, it's so different. It really counts on things like your financial situation, your family situation, all these things, right? Geographically, like where do you want to be geographically? Where do you, what types of projects do you like to do? I think once you answer some of those, then these answers will slowly come up.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think, not rushing, and it's sort of similar to how we answered the other question as well, is not rushing into any decision because you're not tied to any decision. There's so many festivals out there spread throughout the entire country as well that, you can dip your toe in just about anything as a contract worker without much commitment, but you'll get the experience of it. And then all of that just goes onto your resume. It'll do no harm. It'll just keep piling up on that resume the more and more stuff you do like that. But it also gives you the time to explore and see what you want to do.
I would add too that there's, it's like there's no limit. And I mean, really the importance here is to know that there is no kind of barrier. Like from the way that you were talking, it seemed as though you thought that it's like, do I need to get more experience just to find a job? Not always. There are organizations of varying sizes who are looking for people with with a variety of different skill levels. If you wanted to get experience in a job, I believe that COVID has messed that up a little bit, but there are usually opportunities there. There are a lot of opportunities for internships and apprenticeships as well, of course. And I think there's, especially now with the way that the coronavirus has changed how we create and consume art, there are opportunities that you get to create for yourself, resume-wise. And I would touch on something that Nina had said before, in which there are a lot of skills that we develop as musicians that we do not see in ourselves until we get into, until we transition to another field. And I would really encourage you, especially if you're looking into applying for internships, jobs, or grad schools, just to look, as Nina had also said before, we just look inward and really evaluate what it is that you've done in your degree plan, or in your degree so far, and just in your career as a composer and as a musician, and look for those skills, because they will likely inform you of where you actually where you're headed and you can decide for yourself if that's still the direction that you want to go in.
I'm gonna quickly jump in here. These are such great pieces of advice from everybody, and I'm just gonna throw in the idea that as you navigate through your, and this is to all of you, as you navigate through your career, your degrees here at the Jacobs School of Music or on the Bloomington campus, you have an opportunity to do a lot of projects on your own that give you a sense of how you tick, a sense of how you know, what you do well, what you don't do well. Could be performance projects, could be putting on a performance in the Bloomington community, could be leading a student organization that in some ways are like mini not-for-profits. So I'd say try and move away from this idea that you're just going to focus on your degree and then you're going to wake up one day and say, okay, what's next, you know? And really think of your degree as an opportunity to flex your muscles and get a sense of how you tick, and think of your degree as a sort of an on-ramp into something that you have already understood that you're passionate about. Now, obviously you can change, you can shift. There's no way, as was mentioned earlier, I think Nina said, you know, you make a commitment, that's not forever. But I think that what sometimes happens in a conservatory atmosphere is that you think, I've got to practice 7 hours a day, I've got to do my classwork, I've got to get through the degree, and somehow that becomes the end, that becomes the goal, right? And you forget that that's actually the means to the end. That's the way that you can light up your life and think about the things that you really care about. And so what is really important to be doing while you're, you know, on campus, and it's such a great environment in which it opens up your mind to so many different aspects of the world, is to really think about who you are in the middle of it all and what makes you tick. So that when you make decisions about what you're going to do next, it's more about, you know, your core values and what you really feel about the world.
I mean, I think that's so well put and resonates so much. It's absolutely correct what you just said, because if you look at my example, you know, seriously, I mean, I don't have an arts admin degree. I don't have any other degree but performance degrees, and went all the way up to a doctorate in piano performance from the age of 4. That's what I was going to be. And it was that kind of pressurizing weight of, oh my gosh, this is my degree. So obviously, as soon as I finish this, I've got to get a job as a pianist. And that's what I think we're all here on this call trying to desperately relay is that it doesn't mean that you're tied to anything. You know, you can go in any direction you want to. And in my case, it was earth-shattering. It was eye-opening because I realized that I didn't have to be a performer, but like you said, Alan, I knew what I was invested in. I mean, for me, it was always going to be artistic. I knew that's what I wanted to do, but it wasn't necessarily performing as an artist, you know, and that for me, I found that path through the internships, through the working for festivals, and then slowly got myself into a full-time job. But that is also not the only path. And maybe halfway through it, you know, at one point in mine, I thought, maybe I'll go the general manager route, actually. Maybe I'll like the operations. And that's still not off the cards. Nothing's going to ever be off the cards. So you put it really, really well. I think keeping an open mind and exploring as much as you possibly can, and exploring while you're doing your degree rather than just waiting for the end date and then hoping that the job, or applying for the job the next day. It's just, yeah.
You know, Katie, what you said about, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was going to say, Katie, what you said really resonated because even though I actually, even from day one, I never went into, it sounds ironic, I never went into a performance degree with the ultimate goal of being a performer. That was very clear to me, even as a high school student applying for college, or as a college student applying for my master's, even though they were all performance degrees. But even though I had known that, like deep down, I knew that's not the lifestyle I wanted, I knew that that wasn't the type of career I wanted, it was still a struggle to, to really face that and come to terms with that, because when you come into the performance degree in many conservatories, the atmosphere around you is that this is the only path you should and can go on. And that's just simply not true. And That's kind of what I meant, and what everyone has been talking about looking inwards, looking at your values, looking at what inspires you, what makes you feel elated when you're, when
So
you
true.
get done something, when you do something. Yeah.
Yeah, I take so much example from other fields and colleagues that I have that aren't in arts administration to look at their path and see what they've done. And I feel like I always observe that being a professional musician, like within these degree programs, especially within the conservatories, it is like one of the last places in colleges that will say like this is not the only thing that you have to do. And I feel as though, especially as musicians, because it's so part of our identity, it's hard to imagine outside of it. It's actually really scary. And even when you do it, it's kind of hard to get past it, to get past the idea of feeling like you've given up on something or that you've lost something.
Yeah.
That's really always there.
Yeah.
I haven't played marimba in like 5 years. If I wanted to go back and play it, I totally could. But it's, having things such as, Project Jumpstart, the entrepreneurship in general in conservatories now is a thing that did not exist for a lot of your teachers, that did not exist for a lot of the people that came up before you. And I think it's a really good thing to have as a resource now, because even within music, there are so many options for you as a performer that aren't usually shared with you when you go into a degree. Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, what you say is so true, because also when you think about it, when you're going into a performance degree, the goal is win the competition, practice 10 hours a day, be the next Evgeny Kissin, be the next Daniel Trifonov, be the next Joshua Bell, whoever you want to list. And that is the goal. And you go in with, yeah, and you go in with that mindset. I mean, for me, it's interesting because, for me, it was decided when I was 10 that I was going to be a musician. And to be certainly a classical musician, you do have to decide it at that age. I feel quite passionate about that, because you can't wake up at 18 and decide, oh, I'm going to be the next Joshua Bell. It doesn't work like that. So it is something that has to be decided very young. And then when you get into those conservatories, their goal is to make you the next Joshua Bell. And their goal is practice, 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 win the competition. And you're right, Tehvon, that it's sort of different to any other degree, because they don't tell you all the other stuff, because it's like just a one focus mindset. And it's actually bad. It's really bad, because I will tell you, nonprofits in arts administration, nonprofits, arts organizations, we actually need musicians to be on the administrative side, because right now you have a lot of administrators that have joined an arts organization because it's a job, and they say, oh, this seems like a good job, and they could be just about anything else. We actually need musicians to take that path and to realize that by taking that path, you're not losing your identity. You're not leaving the music world. I don't feel like I've left the music world in any shape or form. And I had to explain that to a family. And that was from a personal perspective, that was an emotional roller coaster that lasted about 3 years for them to understand that I wasn't going to be a performer, but I was going to go into arts management. And for me to learn it myself, process it myself, and then explain it to my family that it's not like I'm all of a sudden becoming a computer scientist. I'm still a musician. I'm still working in the music world, but I'm using my skills and my knowledge to help on the management side, to help on the business side, so that it's not run by people who don't really feel passion or love or devotion for the art form, if that makes sense. So,
no, that's absolutely true. And, honestly, no one can take you having been and continue to be a musician. No one can take that away. Like, you have been a musician, you are still a musician. Like, all of us, we are still musicians. We just don't make our living performing on stage. That's a very different thing. So I don't think the identity it'll feel like a loss, but you'll come around to the other end and realize that nobody has stolen this identity from you. You just had to go through a grieving process where you're not making a living that way, and that's absolutely fine.
Thank you so much for those insights. I know we're bumping up on the hour, so I wanted to just take a couple other student questions. I think Karli had a question, and then after that, Hasan also had a question, and then Elaine.
Hi there, my name's Karli Farrell. I'm a senior. I'm actually graduating this semester with a horn performance degree, and I'm also studying business. So I'm not really looking to go and pursue a master's degree right now. I mean, that might happen down the line, but I would really like to start a career somehow. So because of the COVID scene, I've really mostly been applying to business positions. So I've applied to a few sales roles, and I've applied at some technology companies because that's something that I'm really interested in as well. But I have been looking for arts administrative positions, and I really haven't seen many positions that are entry level. And I was wondering if you could maybe help me out and point me in the direction of some entry level positions or something that I would be able to maybe start in right now, even though I don't have a lot of experience other than an internship with Cincinnati Opera.
That's a really good question, and I can go first, and then we can go in rounds. I think that right now you're right. There's maybe across the country there's maybe like a hesitation of hiring right now, but that doesn't mean the work is not needed. Because to me, honestly, since COVID began in March, I've been even busier the last 8 months than normal. So we do need help, and we have some student workers, we have some, we've hired. And so I think that there's still, there's a need across all different sizes of nonprofits, all different sizes of technology companies too. And I think it's for you to kind of find that matchmaking spot of like, what is a nonprofit? What does this nonprofit mean? Maybe it's like something local for you, because then it's about connecting the dots with your network, with your experience, with you geographically, with your background. And then how do you then backtrack those dots to something that you know, or someone that you know, and then you go from there?
If I'm being honest, I think that especially we saw a lot of this in March and April, and we see it now, in which organizations large and small have laid off a ton of people who they decided were, non-essential. And a lot of where that started, aside from, I'm not sure if there's any specific department, but I think that a lot of junior staff members and entry-level jobs were, they've suffered because of it. I remember when I applied for jobs, there was really, struggling to find anything between, entry-level and executive director. Nothing existed. And I think even looking at like Spence's job postings right now, because I haven't looked at them in like months, like it's the same case. I see a lot of transitioning of executive leadership. I don't see, and I haven't seen a ton of openings in lower level positions, which is disappointing because it means that a traditional job in the arts for you is incredibly hard to find right now. What I will say is that the creative economy, especially in classical music, has changed a lot. And even though these jobs don't exist, I think that there, as I said before, there are opportunities, there are paid opportunities that are a little bit more informal than a non-exempt position that do exist, and it takes just a little bit more searching to do it.
Can I quickly just jump in?
Yeah, please.
One thing to think about is your network, and making sure that your LinkedIn profile is where it needs to be, and that you're spending a good amount of time just connecting to the people that you know by word of mouth who are in the industry, because you never know the opportunities that might come up there. And by word of mouth, you'll have a really strong chance at going at something rather than just randomly looking for jobs. So that, I mean, you need to be searching the other way, but
Absolutely.
LinkedIn profile, word of mouth, your network at IU, that's really the path to finding out where those opportunities are.
Yes.
Yeah,
It
and I could say,
absolutely
like
is.
none of my jobs have been a cold call. It's all because of network. And I think
Yep.
your network takes time and effort, and the more
Mhm.
time and effort you put into it, the more you'll get from it.
Mhm.
And it's an investment towards your future.
Yes.
Yeah, the same for me. None of them, all of my jobs have been because of networking. So that is absolutely true. Can't say it enough, which means that any moment you're in, making sure that you have that hat on always, that could this be an opportunity for me? My own story from that is I met Tony Fogg, who's the artistic administrator of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I met him, I don't know, maybe 12, 14 years ago in Dublin. He was on the panel of the Dublin Piano Competition. And I went afterwards. My teacher runs that competition. And I went and had a glass of wine at the event afterwards. And he introduced himself. I had no idea who Tony Fogg was, no idea. And he was like, oh, I'm Mr. Fogg. And what would you like to do? And I was sort of half thinking about it at that point. And he gave me his card. And I kept the card, but now I look at the card in the most fascinating way, because I think, gosh, thank God I was polite to Tony Fogg, because now, 10 years later, he's my counterpart, dare I say it. He's one of the greatest artistic administrators for one of the greatest orchestras. But, you have to think at every moment you're networking, you're meeting somebody that you don't know. You might meet them 10 years later, and they might actually have a huge impact on your life. What I will say about the job market, just from knowing how we've been hit at ISO, we've canceled the whole season and we had to let go over half of the staff, because that half of the staff does a lot of the work that is connected with the performances. And that was the biggest challenge. But we are not going to be in COVID-19 forever.
True.
We are going to get back to normal. And as Tehvon said, arts organizations now as well are actually using this time to be a lot more creative about what we need on the staff. Digital presence is a huge thing that people are looking at. Something that we're looking at is a full-time videographer at some point, to have somebody to capture the digital content every single day rather than just being a once-off thing. And I look at Cincinnati Symphony. They just hired in their senior team a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. Philadelphia did the same thing. Cincinnati also hired, I don't know if it was on their senior team, but they hired somebody that their role is digital. That's what they do. It's like a whole new department almost that's being created. So while it's a rough time, but say that again, sweetie.
I'm from Cincinnati, so I've worked with the Cincinnati Opera and the Cincinnati Symphony all throughout childhood, and I had a relationship with the Cincinnati Opera, so I've worked pretty closely with them.
Nice. Yeah,
so,
Nate
be
is
brave
amazing,
and reach out.
Yeah.
Be brave and reach out to your network, because the only person who will advocate for you is yourself. Right. And having the guts to do that is what will make the difference between an opportunity being presented in front of someone who doesn't do anything about it and someone who does.
Perfectly said. Yep.
I think Hasan had a question. I know we're right at 4, but maybe we could take one last student question before we close the session.
Of course.
Hello, thank you. I'm so glad that I can have this kind of session with whom are currently in the field. I'm a third year of DM student in piano performance, and I want to keep building my performance career. But also, I am very interested in arts administration a lot, like programming or management or organizing things. So I'm currently doing competitions and more concerts and teachings. Also, I am minoring in arts administration. And I think doing both areas is possible because I'm a student at school right now. But when I'm thinking about my future after graduation, I cannot even imagine. And I know it sounds too much, but I don't want to give up any of them. And I have just questioned that, have you ever had the same conflict like me? And do you think we can get a job satisfying both?
Yes,
Yeah.
my husband does.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's, you definitely can get both. And again, we need that actually. We need more musicians to put on the entrepreneurial hat and to cross over. You look at the US orchestra model right now, and one of the biggest challenges in the US orchestra model right now is that we keep our musicians in one box
This.
and we keep our management in the other box. It is such, and both boxes hate it. They want to be in the same box, but we stupidly don't let them very often. So we need musicians to think more in a more with a more entrepreneurial hat on, and I feel like I've mentioned him a couple of times. I do love my husband very much, but he's a prime example of it. He is on the faculty of a university teaching music, lecturing in music, teaching music majors, but he's also pursuing an MBA, and he's finding where he's needed in that university. He's saying, okay, he part of his job is teaching music majors, and the other part is administrative duties, because he's the artistic director of a chamber music series there. So he works with the marketing department, and he realized, I need to put on an entrepreneur hat because I don't want to stop playing, which was different to me. I did want to stop playing. I wanted just to do admin, but that was my path. His path was, I don't want to stop playing, but I also want to do more than just play a concerto every weekend. And you just be brave, and we need people to be brave to do it. I promise you, the arts is going to benefit enormously from more musicians saying, I want to cross over.
And not just that, I think it's also like when I think about who was it, Chicago Symphony, who had a huge breakdown in their CBA last year, and I wonder, how much quicker could this have gone had there been more administratively savvy musicians. So I think regardless of what you're knowing about what's happening on the other side of the curtain or backstage or in the offices is only going to make you that much more of a prepared and insightful and wise musician or administrator, because you ultimately know about everything that is happening and not just your piece. But specifically to your question, prior to this job, even now I have like 2.5 jobs and I need to really let go of one of them because I'm tired. But before then, I was a manager of external affairs for TT, and simultaneously, an artistic advisor for a program of Black composers in Florida, as well as working for the Artist Relief Tree. That's 3 completely separate things that feed different parts of my soul. If I wanted to sub any of those out for being a musician that wanted to create, new content for the internet for marimba, if I could afford one, I absolutely could. I think that you want to look for the right kind of job that will give you the space to also explore the other parts of your life that you enjoy, playing piano professionally. But I think that those jobs exist, and I also think that those performance opportunities exist as well. There's a ton of we just filmed with Amdi Marie Moore, a soprano, who's a realtor on one side, and she still performs. I know a person who works as a jeweler and is still a baritone. Like that balance is possible. It's just finding the right jobs or finding the right people to work for who will allow you to balance everything in your life that you want to.
And if you think about it, when you enter 1 job or 2 jobs or 3 jobs, you're creating this portfolio for your life, right? And what is that balance you want in your life? You're all creating different lives. There's no competition between one person and the next person. It's going to look like a very different path. And when you enter any of them, you're entering an ecosystem, and that ecosystem makes it so that you do have to understand what is happening, so you understand your role in that ecosystem. When Katie was talking about, a CBA, like trying to make sure both sides understand each other. imagine if more musicians really could understand, the financial implications of things, financial statements, like that those are things that you can all learn right now, because not only will understanding financial statements be beneficial for your professional life, it'll be great for your personal life too.
It's true.
Well, I think.
Sorry, I had one more thing.
Go ahead.
But just in terms of striking that balance, especially for musicians, mental and emotional health is incredibly important if you want to continue doing things and not burn out really quickly. So, if you do choose to kind of split these things up, or even, if you choose one job, make sure that you also take care of yourself, and make your mental, physical, and emotional health a priority, because that'll only make you better as an administrator, as a performer, etc.
Right. And you can think about it in stages too, and Elizabeth, I was talking to her a little bit earlier about this, but I took 4 years off of my DMA, and I made a conscious decision to do that because I wanted to dedicate like a full-on sprint with my professional career. And it really needed that at the time. And I think I gained, 4 years of experience at San Francisco Symphony akin to 10 years of experience, whatever happened, because it was, I had 4 different roles, 3 promotions, and but all it took was me evaluating my life and saying, okay, these are my priorities right now. But I came back to practicing and playing the piano. And, a year and a half ago, I said, okay, I really have to get this DMA done. And I knocked out 2 recitals in 6 months. And you just, you prioritize, you move back and forth. That happens in your life, and it's okay.
It's true.
And quickly, just to let you all know that, for those of you who've not come to see any of us in the OECD, we're having these conversations all the time. And so Joni is phenomenal, Nathan's amazing, and just, make contact with us and come and chat, come and shoot the breeze. And we're happy to continue the conversation with you.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end the session. I really want to be respectful of our panelists' time, and I want to thank them so much. They're such smart, creative, multi-talented individuals, as you've probably seen over the course of this hour. And I just want to thank them each for being so willing to share their wisdom and experiences with us. So let's all give them a little round of applause.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to speak to everyone.
So
Really
great to
was.
see you
Thank
guys.
you.
Very, very, very special. Yeah.
We'll have the recording up on the YouTube page sometime within the next few weeks. Everyone have a great weekend. It's great to see you all.